County Commission is back in session. Next on the agenda will be Ms. Evelyn M. Ramirez, Census Bureau presentation.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, gentlemen commissioners and chair. Thank you so much for the opportunity to allow me to come and present. I'm Evelyn Ramirez Gleesman, and I am your liaison effectively for Franklin County, Florida, and the U.S. Department of Commerce Census Bureau. This is my second decennial census. I was also the liaison about 9 years ago, and we had the same presentation, slightly different numbers, of course. So I want you all to know that I'm available. I will provide my contact information with Mr. Marone. And I've had the great pleasure of speaking with and meeting with Commissioner Lockley. The census is incredibly important, and we're going to talk about that as briefly as possible. And then we're going to talk about the employment opportunities that we also have. I'm very passionate about bringing those employment opportunities locally here to Franklin County. And so we'll start with talking about just how beautiful and unique Franklin County is, how diverse, and some of your needs are also diverse, I will say.
No.
National and natural disasters have impacted you tremendously. Sometimes not covered necessarily, in the media, but, I see those trucks going up and down various streets, still carrying the debris, and, build up and being able to rebuild, rather, is going to take some time, and it's going to take money. And so in order to be able to have access to the funding that you need, you will need to have a very accurate census count, which just gives us a snapshot, the demographics of your residents. So if people live here, if they're using your roads, if their children are going to schools, if people are using your emergency services, they need to be counted. So I have a little information here which you can also access, and I can give you the sources here. We do several surveys every year. In fact, we even have if you are familiar with the employment records, the employment numbers that come out monthly, we actually do that survey, even though it comes through the Department of Labor. We've had a contract with them for several decades. So we're actively involved in constantly doing surveys, but the one that locks you in number-wise is the decennial census, which happens every 10 years. The first one we did was in 1790. And we have done one ever since, but it seems that every 10 years we have to sort of start all over again. People forget. There's changes. And it's really important that we share this with the community and inform them as to why, they might not be able to vote. Some people can't vote. Some people have made mistakes. They're not in a position to vote. Some people are too young to vote, right? But you can definitely be counted. And so it's incredibly important. Political power is one. Redistricting, political representation, congressional seats, that's all tied into your census information. And then over $675 billion a year in funding is allocated based on the numbers. You may have a need in a few months for something really important, like fixing a road. And in the census, we follow the numbers. The needs don't follow. The money follows the numbers. The money does not follow the need. So if you need to build a school in a few years, but let's say there was a lot of children that were not counted, as that's what happened in 2010. The largest undercounted group for the 2010 census was children under 5. There's a lot of reasons for that, but the impact is when it's time to build a school, it's a difference between knowing how many children, how much funding you need, and having makeshift little trailers that aren't necessarily the best or conducive for overcrowding and learning. So that's something to think about. The other reason that we need the census and what we use it for is for education, healthcare, transportation, social services, emergency services, different kinds of funding. And I want to talk about privacy and confidentiality. We, as a census worker, anyone who's involved with the census, whether you are a contractor or you work for the census, whether it's a temporary or full-time position, you swear an oath for life. You swear an oath for life, and if you violate that oath, it's $250,000 and 5 years in prison. Okay, so we take privacy incredibly seriously. And there are lots of ways that we protect privacy. And also, I wanted to talk about that because I know that there's a lot of noise about confidentiality. But it's important that people know we don't share the information with anyone. Everything is sealed for 72 years and 1 day. Then it becomes public information. Is anybody into genealogy? Doing research for their family, right? You get a lot of information through the census, and the reason you're able to do that is because it does become public record after 72 years. So the goal is to count everyone once, only once, and in the right place. And you know, it seems pretty simple, but it's challenging. It's challenging because between 2010 and 2020, people move, houses change, natural disasters change the landscape, and there's new developments in construction. And once again, we have to count everyone. So the way we're going to ask people to respond is by self-enumeration, to self-respond. You start with households. Well, the first thing we're going to do is what's called address canvassing, which we're doing this month. And I'm here because I also want to inform people that you need to know the difference between a legitimate census worker who is going to verify addresses, which we can then send information to those addresses next year, and someone who's trying to scam you, because we will never ask for your bank account number, we'll never ask for your social security number, we're not going to ask you for money, and if someone says they're from the census and they're asking for those things, they're not from the census. So that's one thing to think about. So you'll have the option of, through the internet, maybe through a smartphone or the computer, filling out your census form. It's pretty exciting. We've never done this before, so we're really catching on to technology. Now, in a place like Franklin County, you have places that are homes and locations that are very rural. Maybe there's not as much internet. So for those homes, after the third attempt, then you will receive a paper opportunity to fill out your census form. So we start sending out, if you will, reminders mid-March. So that's when you can expect them. Now, between mid-March 2020 and now, we've got a lot to do. We've got to inform people. This has to matter, and people have to understand census equals money. Census equals political representation. What we do here, though, this sharing with people, the information, this is completely nonpartisan. We're not affiliated with any political party. We simply are charged to inform people of what's asked of them, which is mandated, by the way, in the Constitution, Article 1, Section 2. So what we're doing is an idea that's been working is what we call a Complete Count Committee, or a CCC. Essentially, it's a body, it's a committee, preferably of community leaders who really are in touch with the pulse of the community, who can advise as to how we can spread the word. So maybe something like your upcoming festivals. I've had the great pleasure of having worked with Mayor Van Johnson of Apalachicola in the past. He's signing on to do a Complete Count Committee. He understands the importance of it, so we're going to be working with Apalachicola. But at the county level, there are other cities, there's other towns, there's other communities that need representation, need to know why this is important, and they need to know if they really want their funding, this is how we can capture that here for this community. We can talk about the response area, outreach area mapper web application. It's really great. It sort of predicts how people are going to respond based on what the last numbers show. Just to give you an idea, the response rate for Franklin County in 2010 was 69%, and frankly, I think we could do better. 69% means it's almost 70%, which means almost 30% of your funding was left on the table. And once again, the numbers of people who aren't going to participate or are going to participate, you're locked in for, again, 10 years. So when it's time to get that funding and get those grants and whatever tier you're designated, they're going to look at those numbers, okay? So that's important. I also would like to talk about how a place as beautiful and diverse as Franklin County has, there's huge differences between some of the homes in this county. You've got multi-million-dollar homes on the one spectrum, and then you have other homes that are, you know, very humble and very small and people struggling. And so what happens is, if not everybody knows to participate, you're only going to get one snapshot of what the community looks like. And it's not just the multi-million-dollar homes. We also have the question of, well, my son's in college or my daughter's in college. Do we count her? Yes, we count her and him, if they're living most of the time at home. If they're living most of their time on campus or at their university, which is not in this county, then they're counted there. The same thing happens with snowbirds. We have a huge number of snowbirds that live in Franklin County. And they might say, home is where the heart is. You know, I love being on the beach. That's my home. But if they're mostly spending their time in, say, let's say Rhode Island for most of the year, and they're only here for 3 months, then they're going to be counted hypothetically in Rhode Island, because that's where they live most of the time. So we want to make sure that we're also, for the snowbird population that comes here seasonally, that they know what's expected of them. So we once again have an accurate picture of what we're doing. So there's lots of ways of getting involved. I could talk forever. I don't have an off button, but the message needs to come. It's true. But the message needs to come from y'all. The message needs to come from trusted voices that understand this. And when I say that I'm available, I am available, and I'm very passionate about this county. And all the counties that I serve, but I'm closely related to this county. I'll be living here at some point in the next few months, and and I understand it and I know it. But as a trusted voice, it's the community that needs to speak up and say why this is important. Okay, so so one of the ways that we could also spread the word is at some of the upcoming festivals that you have and events and groups. We have discussed doing a complete count committee. People sometimes grimace when they hear, oh no, another committee. But we need to educate everyone to know, like, this is the one you want to be on, because this is the one that all the committees matter, but your funding is greatly tied to this. This is really important. We also have job opportunities, which again, I'm very passionate about bringing to the county. You can go to 2020.gov/jobs. I have also shared this information with Mr. Michael Marone, who's going to be sharing this online and on different platforms. It can take a while, depending on what the operations is, to hear back, but I encourage everyone to please apply. The jobs are competitive pay. We pay 58 cents a mile in addition to $12 to $19 an hour, depending on what you qualify for, and we do work with your schedule, and we want people that are local. There's one particular operation that we're doing. It's called address canvassing, as I mentioned. So you will see people in the community walking around verifying addresses, because the process will involve mailing out notifications with a special identification number, so you can self-respond through the internet or smartphone. And then, of course, those who aren't going to respond right away, or who don't have access on that third attempt, or essentially the fourth attempt, they'll have the opportunity to have a mailed out questionnaire. So, but we again, please know, community, we don't share any of this information with ICE, with the CIA, with the FBI, with the IRS. All your information is completely confidential. And that includes the address canvassing. Sometimes people don't want to verify this is where they live, because circumstances are different for everybody, you know, and people seem to confuse things, and we want to make sure that the information is completely streamlined, so when it's time for 2020, April 1st, Census Day, to arrive, your community is informed, and they can make an informed decision and realize, wow, if I fill this out, our community gets representation and we get our funding. That's what every resident, anybody who lives in this county, needs to know. And the time is now to inform them. So my contact information is here. I'm looking forward to working with everyone. We've got lots of partnerships to continue to develop. We'll be working with libraries. We've got a national partnership with libraries. But again, just because we have a national partnership doesn't mean that the local library necessarily knows what's happening. So we'll be around, and we're hoping to find opportunities. Also, if anyone is willing to, in the community, to donate space for training and employment training and testing, that would be really helpful. But most importantly, I'm here to answer questions, and I'd love to answer any of your questions. If you have any now, commissioners, I'll take your questions.
Pleasure to the board. Any questions?
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
I'm remembering several months ago when Commissioner Parrish reminded all of us here on the board about the importance of recovering FEMA funds for disaster recovery money. And he said, I want to make sure we account for every broken light bulb as we did our inventory. I want to emphasize how important I feel that it is that money from a federal standpoint is going to start trickling down the more comprehensive and the more accurate we are in our current census issue. The other issue I would like to say that I think is so important is the word you said earlier, the privacy issue. I think this has got to be the middle name of the Census Department. I believe those people are more threatened by the fact that their information is going to be disseminated in an inappropriate way, and I love the fining and the imprisonment issues that are penalties in case that happens, and I think that's very important. I also want to encourage you to get involved with our local newspaper to make as much information as possible available. I recognize the fact, too, that it made me sad to see that 17.7% of our people under age 65 have no health insurance, and that was statistics several years ago. And we are considering our hospital today and our healthcare issues today. And I see that that information. And that complete count committee you mentioned, yes. Will you work with our county staff to be sure that that happens in whatever appropriate way that we can do that?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Commissioner Bolt. Yes, I had the lovely pleasure of meeting with Commissioner and Chair Lockley, who is, in fact, we're working on that, establishing that. It's great to have staff, but it really needs to come from the community leaders. I was able to meet with some of the community faith-based leaders here as well. You really want that happening, and I'm so happy to hear that from you.
Well, we just offered us some job opportunities
yes.
to the tune of $12 to $19 an hour.
$12
I think
to
that needs to be, you know, we ought to be singing hosannas about that with you and making sure that we take advantage of that.
Yes. Yes,
okay.
Absolutely. And I'm happy to help, and I will be available for
we'll
setting that up.
encourage you to work with our staff on that.
Sure.
Okay?
Done, yeah. We also do a workshop. So once you get everyone together, we'll do a workshop.
Good.
Any additional questions, gentlemen commissioners?
Anybody else got some? Well, we like I said, we get with the staff and they'll try to work you out a place. If that armor will be available or something, to let them do their little workshop and their little training. But after day, you know, you ain't got nobody using it or renting it. And also, we appreciate you coming in and giving us this information, because it's
Thank you.
very well needed. Like you said, a lot of them, you know, people is people. The first thing they holler, I don't want nobody in my business. They just like me and ain't got 2 cents, you know.
Right.
So, if you want your business, it needs to be known, because it helped in the long run. You got 10 years it helped for that 5 minutes or 10 minutes, whatever y'all take to fill out the paper.
It takes less than 10 minutes.
Yeah. For that 10 minutes, it helps down the line. For 10 years, you're either going to get the right money or lose money.
Right, right. If I may add something quickly. So I had mentioned that the most undercounted group were children under 5. And there's many reasons for that. Not everybody grows up in a traditional household, right? 2 parents. Sometimes it's one grandparent. And sometimes a grandparent will say, I love this baby. That's not my son or daughter, that's my grandbaby. I'm not going to count this baby. Or there's a dad, a great dad, single dad with 1 child. But the child, you know, that's his baby, but his girlfriend has a baby. And they all live together, they're a family, they're considered a household. But as much as he loves that other child, that's his girlfriend's child, so he's not going to count her or him on that census. So it's these little nuances that happen. We want everyone to understand, everyone living in the household, if they're spending most of their time in Franklin County, that's who needs to fill out. And everyone in that household, including infants and children under 5 and elders, have to be counted. It makes a big difference. So we'll be working with schools as well. We've got lots of other events that are happening. So I'll be reaching out to your superintendent of schools. And we want everybody to be informed. We want children to be informed. Often they're the emissaries who provide this information. You know, the non-English foreign speaking population as well, they need to be counted. I mean, let's put all this, everything else aside. If a human being is walking on your streets and their children are going to schools, and when there's an emergency, they also need to be evacuated, they need to be counted. And confidentiality and privacy is incredibly important. So I'm glad you all touched on that, and absolutely, that's something that we take seriously.
Okay, once again, thank you for coming in. And
Thank you so much.
we appreciate you.
Thank you so much. Thank
Information.
you, Franklin County, and thank you, commissioners. Thank you.
Next on the agenda will be Ms. Carrie Williams, request.
Morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
I'm here today representing Apalachicola Oyster Company. They've actually been real successful. They've had a couple of
Let me
problems.
get
as
your
you-
name for the,
Oh, I'm sorry, Dan Garlick.
okay.
They had, obviously had a few issues. They had, a theft, I guess, a little while ago, but that's minor compared to what the emergency is that we have now. The emergency is that probably from the storm, probably from other aspects, natural inducement, there's actually sedimentation that's starting to load up the entrance going into the 2-mile channel. And as you know, Corps of Engineers is going to dredge that sometime, but it's going to be about another year or so after East Point is done. And the problem we have is that the salinity is a real problem for the intake to basically nourish the spat. The salinity is like about a third of what it needs to be. And the biggest problem is that when it rains quite a bit like we've had this year, that the fresh water just stays on top of the salt water. Salt water's on the bottom, fresh water's on top. And that's what they're pulling up. And so we went in and looked at tried to get an idea of how to remedy this issue. And the best we could tell is that the entrances going straight out from 2 Mile, and also the one that's coming from the east, the ones that are really piled up. I mean, it's pretty shallow, and hence the reason that they're going to go in and dredge the channels sometime here in the near future. My client is willing to go ahead and do it now because he obviously can get a benefit by getting that salinity back up, and that will help his spat survive and keep his operation going. And so I've talked to the Corps of Engineers. I've talked to Mr. Schuler about a lot of different issues, trying to see how we might be able to make this work. We actually, I should say AOC actually bought the land right next to it to develop a spoil area, but it's going to be way too small. But it'll take care of the short-term issues that I was talking about, which are going to be around the lease area that is where his dock is now. That area took a beating during the storm. It shoaled in. There was a lot of material in there, and we actually worked with the Department of Environmental Protection to get an emergency permit to be able to use that work there. The unfortunate thing is that alone is not going to correct the problem. The problem is also those humps that I'm telling you that are out there by 2 Mile Channel. Mr. Williams is here, and basically what he's willing to do is to expend his own money to at least open up those parts of the channel. If he can dredge those 2 areas that I'm talking about, I think that's going to resolve the issue of allowing better flushing and flow, so he can get the appropriate amount of salinity going in for his oyster house. I've been talking to the Corps of Engineers because we've been looking for a place. We need more area. That's what it really comes down to. The spot we have is small. Like I say, it'll accommodate what's around the basin itself, but not out in the 2 Mile Channel. And so we have looked at the issue of using the old spoil site, which a lot of you probably know where it is. It's about 20 acres, and it's just to the south of the airport on Powell Rivers Road, and that's the area that we'd like to use. We only need a small area because what we're going to be dredging out is going to end up being solids. We're going to take the solids from the place that he has next to him, transport from there to the Powell River site. So we looked at an area about 2 acres, just under 2 acres, and I think that's going to be sufficient for what we're going to do. So the issue is, why should this private person do this thing in a public water body? Well, it's got to be done sooner or later anyway, and he can't wait for a year for the Corps of Engineers to come in and may or may not be able to, be ready at that time. It's all a matter of funds and everything else, and he needs to do something now. So that's his emergency. What's the county got to benefit by this? Well, you're going to get the channel back a little bit quicker than, waiting, another year. So I have talked to some of the commercial fishermen. Some of those are complaining that it is shallow, but they're waiting for 2 Mile to be dredged. But he's willing to at least open up those areas now, so that'll resolve some of the issues, and that's a public benefit in that regard. I've got I don't know if, do we have the maps? Do you have some maps there?
I think
think
he's
you're showing
working to
those
get
up?
it online.
Oh. And this is the same stuff. I sent this to you about, 2 weeks ago or so. Did you all get that? That's pretty much the same thing, but really what it comes down to is that the dredge operation would suck material from there, take it to his site, which is right next to the oyster house. That area would dewater. He would take the solids from there, load it into a truck that's sealed. The truck that's sealed would drive approximately 1.5 miles to the Powell River site. The idea of having it sealed, of course, is to just minimize the amount of slushing or spillage that would occur on the road. So we're trying to safeguard that. We looked at 2 ways getting there. One was residential, the other was right down 98. 98's a lot closer, and residential, you can imagine what kind of problems you could have with that. Trucks going through neighborhoods and things like that. The idea is that once we get, before we even take the spoil to the site, we have to prep the area. Here we go. Okay.
Can
Could you go up a little bit?
that's fine, just scroll it up a little bit so they can see the second spoil site, or the second dredge site.
Well,
No, the first
go
picture
back to
was
the first
fine.
one. We'll come to that in a minute.
Just try, I see there was a drag. What I'm trying to do is get this, so the board and the public see both the dredge areas.
Well,
Yes, sir.
Yeah, there you go.
Perfect, thank you. sir.
Okay, so what this is an aerial of the 2 Mile area, of course, and I've circled the areas where we found to be the shallow spots, and this is the areas that are creating the problem with the circulation in the 2 Mile channel. So you see the AOC facility, and you see the primary spoil site. That area has already been dug out, excavated, ready to roll. That can accept spoil now. The areas that we're looking at dredging are just where we have. Yeah, right in here and right in here. These 2 areas here are the ones that are shoaled in. Those areas that we've got a hydraulic dredge to suck it from here and from there and bring it to this point. Obviously, as this fills up, that's when we would have to run it down US 98 to Powell Rivers Road into this area right here is what we're proposing as the site to deposit the spoil. This area here is about 2 acres. It's plenty. We're looking at no more than 3,000. We actually, I think, are probably doing overkill, but we want to make sure we're on the safe side instead of, making it too small. So that's basically the overlay on that. The next picture will show the actual site itself. As far as the secondary spoil site, there you go. And basically if anybody's familiar with this area, I think you are, Smokey, but there's a berm all around this thing here. And as you drive over this berm, then you fall into almost like a valley kind of thing. This site's kind of interesting because I didn't realize it, but apparently a few years ago, once this was filled, I guess the school board ended up taking a lot of the fill to build a new high school. So since that happened, you see these areas in here, trenches, and there's another wet area over here. And it's taken on wetland indicators, wetland characteristics. This is basically on a plateau. It has not been dug out. And in here, it's mostly scrub. You see some saplings that are starting to pop back up for the most part. This is probably, this would be an easy area to do the work, and this is really all we need. But what we would do is come in here, keep this berm in place, come in here and actually build another berm by taking dirt from here and pushing it up so you have a berm around this area. And then that central area is where we would deposit the spoil. And we're looking no more than 3,000 cubic yards, is about 20 truckloads, somewhere around there. You can see, here's the road. We'd obviously going to have a lot of cautionary things to deal with because we got trucks on here, and we don't want to create any more of a problem than we have to in that regard. Our backup is that if the trucks do have some spillage, we're going to have a water truck there to hose down the roads. We've gone to great lengths to make sure that we've covered all our bases on that. The reason that we picked this spot here is because in my conversation with the Corps of Engineers, they're having some questions with DEP about the status of these areas that have been excavated. And the reason is that they're trying to figure out whether or not they've created wetlands or not. It's inside the spoil area, so I don't think that's going to be an issue. But, on the utmost side of caution, we're going to stay on the high ground. We're not getting anywhere near those wet areas. And that's the other reason for building that berm around this thing, to contain that on that site. Most of the spoil is coming from the 2 Mile Channel. Probably about 150 cubic yards are going to come from our site alone, so the bulk of that is coming out of the 2 Mile Channel. So I think the county can really see a benefit from a navigational aspect. But obviously our benefit for doing it in the first place is to get that salinity back so the AOC operation remains effective and is successful. That's pretty much what it's all about. If you got some questions, I'll be happy to entertain them.
Mr. Chairman.
And of course, what we're looking for is approval to use the site for this project.
Dan, in your discussions with the Corps, have they said anything about the pine trees? They're not saplings, or pine trees grow all up in this area?
You talking about in here?
Yes.
When I went through the other day and walked through it, it's pretty much scrub. I mean, we walked through and you could
So
just...
does this stuff need to be moved before you deposit the spoil there?
We would shape that so it holds the material. We don't want it to slush off on the sides. We want it to...
Right, but I understand the berm all the way around. I'm asking specifically about the trees and everything in there. How would you move this spoil if you wanted to move it, such as the school board did, with trees growing up in the middle of it? That's my concern.
If the trees are in there, we'll cut them down.
They're in there. I
Yeah,
mean, I've
like-
been by there and looked at it too, and you ain't even got to get out of your car. You can see pine trees growing on
Yeah,
it.
but
I mean,
we
I don't
actually-
call that a sapling, but anyway.
Yeah, we actually walked into it and walked around and...
But I think the stuff needs to be moved before you actually deposit the spoil. So if you want to remove the spoil at a later point, you ain't running up against trees with a tractor and all this stuff. And I was wondering what the Corps' input was on that, or do they even want the trees moved? But how do you move the spoil later if you allow the trees to continue to grow and get bigger? How would you go in and remove this stuff to prepare the pit for future, not 2020 when they're supposed to dredge the channel, but 10 or 15 years from now? I mean, seems like to me the trees need to be moved out of the way so that.
If there's any trees in there that we want to use, we'll move them. I mean, but I
I
don't...
mean, if you're going to do excavation and do a berm around that site as the red line shows, then why wouldn't you move the trees out of the way
Yeah.
also? Oh, hold. You can't speak from back there.
I got it. Come up front if you want.
This is Kerry Williams. Kerry's the president, the owner of the AOC, but any trees in there, obviously we got to move. There's shrubs
Okay,
and all
that's-
kinds of stuff. We got to
I
get
just
that
wanna-
open.
I just want to
and-
make sure we're not doing anything we shouldn't do as it
Yeah.
relates to the Corps and the
Yeah,
future dredge.
the Corps engineers, I've had conversations back and forth, and basically what they've told me is that if you can figure out how to make it work, we don't care. We were going to be there later on, but if you
Okay.
want to get in now, you're doing us a favor by going there and taking some of the stuff that we're going to take out a year later. And if it helps you, then we're not going to stand in your way to do the work.
Yeah, the disposal area is the county's responsibility. It was initially, and in a perfect world, we would have been doing maintenance out there these last 20 years and kept the trees cut down, but we didn't. But so ultimately, when the Corps comes in here to reshape them, they'll give us a bill for removing everything, including trees, to make the capacity back to these. So it's our responsibility. And if he's
We'll
gonna
take
help us
care of
do
the
that-
trees, you ain't got to worry about that. To build a berm, we're gonna have to
Let me,
scrape up some dirt, and to scrape
let
up
me
the
get your
dirt, we're
name
gonna
for
have
the
to clear
record,
the
sir.
trees.
Name for the record.
My name's Kerry Williams,
Okay,
owner
that's,
of Apalachicola Orchard Company.
that's the only real concern I have with it, is make sure that it's where we can go in there and move the spoil, should we want to in future years, to prepare the spoil site for 10 years from now, to make sure that it's reusable. And in order to do that, you're gonna have to remove some spoil out of it to make room for new spoil. You see what I'm saying? So I don't want to have to.
We're gonna do it right. I mean, we're gonna come in and scrape the trees off and roll them to the back and then create the berm and get it fixed, put stuff in there. It'll be complete, the ground will be clean when we start coming in with the spoils.
Just out of curiosity, how tall a berm are you all going to build?
Probably, well, it'll be, let's see, okay, here's grade.
Right?
So we'll take this out, push it up. So that
So
net-
how deep
about
will the-
4 feet is all we're really going to need. It's just
The
enough so we got
initial-
a basin
The
there.
initial depth of those pits was probably 15
Lot deeper.
feet.
And they're a lot deeper now.
And so you'll ramp up to get on top of the existing berm?
It's already ramped, and the only
Okay.
thing we might have to do is that, I've already talked to the contractor that would be doing that work, and so we talked about that slope, and he said, if he's got to drop it down a bit for the safety of the trucks, we'll bring it back up to where it was after we're done. And
So the amount of
so,
material they're hauling in there is gonna be well, when the Corps originally judged the channel 15 or 20 years ago, there was thousands of cubic yards, and so there's not that much.
tens of thousands.
Tens of thousands.
Yeah. And Kerry's here, I mean, I've talked to Mr. Schuler about, you know, liability, he's willing to take on, they hold harmless, he's willing to put the letter of credit. If there's issues with that, then he's here to take care of that issue too. Obviously, he's serious about trying to keep his operation going, this is really, really important to him. You want to add?
I don't think so. The site will be in better shape when we leave than when we came. I can assure you that. I mean, you can ride by and look at what we're doing out there. We do everything we do it right. And we'll leave the site in better shape, for sure. Do whatever needs to be done, do it right.
I like what you're doing, cause it's going, right now, the navigation flow for them boats is, you might not get out, I know you can't get out on low tide, you got that. And sooner or later, it's gonna take an extra high tide to get out. So, sound good to me, but.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah, I want to hear what the lawyer had to say.
in my discussions with Mr. Garlick, I've been focusing in, as he said, on the issues concerning liability to the county as a result of putting the dredge material in the spoil site, and also any potential increased cost to the county whenever you want to recertify that site for the dredging of 2 Mile Channel a year or two from now. And although that agreement has not been drafted, Mr. Carey, you're here now, you're hearing it live for the first time, but in talking with Mr. Garlick, he has agreed on behalf of the landowner that his client will agree to all of those conditions. That document has not yet been drafted, but it will be drafted. And he has also agreed to a 2-year irrevocable letter of credit in the amount of $100,000 to fund any expenses that the county may incur as a result of his activities in this public spoil site. So I'm satisfied that we have covered from a legal standpoint the issues that need to be covered. The question is a policy decision, are you going to allow it to move forward or not? But I think we've covered the regulatory and the liability issues and the funding of any cost.
Any more?
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
Dan, Mr. Williams, I think, just to clarify, I think what Commissioner Parrish was trying to say is we got to make sure, because we've already been told in the future when we are able to dredge the 2 Mile Channel, there's going to have to be a recertification of the site for us that the Corps told us we're going to have to do. So we're just trying to make sure that we're not going to run into some kind of pitfall by allowing anything there that now it's somehow going to be a problem for us. That's just a concern. You know what I mean? Because we're going to make sure we're not cutting our nose off to spite our face. You know what I
Yes,
mean?
sir.
So that's the only thing.
And I'm just trying to remember, this improves navigation, I understand, for all of our seafood industry in this area. And you're opening up the pathway for a more salty water to facilitate the growth of your spat that's out there in the water in your aquaculture. Is that how I picture that?
Yes, sir, that's right. You gotta have
Okay.
16 parts per thousand salinity in the water to grow oysters, or to grow the spat to get it started. And a lot of times, if the wind's blowing out of the east with fresh water, we was getting down to 5 or 6.
I see.
And it was causing us a lot of problems. And I want to clarify something. Dan said I was planning to dredge the east end of that channel. I'm not planning to dredge the east end of that channel. I'm planning to dredge from my place out to the west and then straight out to the bay. I wasn't planning on dredging on that east end. I mean, there's so much in these dredging down there, there's no way I could haul it all out of there. I'm just trying to get me a path out and a deeper channel for the salinity to come in from the middle of the bay out into my site. So I'm definitely not planning on dredging that east end right there where he's got it circled. I'm just going to go from the site right straight out to the bay.
Just going out the
Mr. Chair-
channel.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, if I may? Clarification, what Mr. Garlick's presentation was, 3,000 cubic yards dredging the two circled areas, the area to the south, the area to the east. What I'm now hearing you say is you intend to dredge the area between what's marked on the map as the AOC facility out to the south part of the channel between the two islands?
Yes, sir.
And everything in between the mainland and that circle?
Yes, sir. I wouldn't be surprised if he wouldn't steal
Dan, what does that do to our
3,000
spoils?
yards there, because that,
What does that do to our calculation of the spoil site usage at 3,000?
It's less.
Excuse me?
It'll be less.
You're dredging more area but getting less fill, really?
no, we're dredging less area.
Dredging less area. If he did, we've looked at that, identified that as an issue there. If Kerry feels that he can make it work, is that from talking to your folks that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And if that's what it is, then our spoil amount is going down.
Okay, so
Probably
your 3,000 square
1,000.
feet, I had understood.
yards.
Right, 3,000 cubic yards included the two circled areas on the map and then an area around the dockage
Correct.
of the AOC facility. He's
Right.
now talking about expanding that to include dredging the channel, which I think is a good thing. I just want to make sure that that is going to include the 3,000 cubic feet. I want to make sure the spoil site usage is going to be what the board is understanding at 3 or 4 feet and not 8 or 12 feet if we do more dredging.
No, I think it's gonna be less if he, this area there, I mean, we may find that you may wanna have to do it anyway down the future when we're going through here.
I'm gonna need to dredge that channel from that circle down there on the bottom, all the way down and turn to the right and come to my facility. That whole section there, right down the middle, is gonna have to be dredged out. I gotta be able to come in there with a barge when I start harvesting in December and January, and it's only about 2.5 foot deep on low tide right there. I'm gonna need to dredge that channel all the way from that lower circle into my facility. I'm not going past my facility to the east down there where he's got the other circle. So that's going to decrease the area that we're dredging, but there's going to be, they could still be 3,000 yards or so of spoils easily in that area we're talking about dredging.
Okay. I was just trying to clarify the scope of the dredging and the use of the spoil site. Frankly, sounds to me from what I'm hearing from the board's comments, the more dredging, the better, so.
Well, the navigation gets better.
Yeah, it'll be good for the boats. But you coming down the channel and to your place, take that left, come to your place.
Yes, sir.
So you probably
Right.
have more cubic yards, right? You're dropping off that one circled area, but then you're including all of that.
Not the whole area, just right down this channel, right down the center. I'm only gonna do a place about 40 or 50 foot wide just to get a deep channel down the middle so I can get some salt water up in there.
A lot of that's already maneuverable. It's the bumps, like I'm showing where that circle is, that's where the problems are. The shoaling is there.
Yeah, I think the circles are confusing people. That represents just the high part. They were gonna dredge the whole channel anyway.
Okay.
Yeah, whatever it
That
takes
is
to get that,
confusing.
back and forth, that's what we're trying to do. Who knows, when we start getting in there, we might bounce into something else like a sunken boat or something, it's gonna come out, it's gotta come out when we're doing the work.
Commissioners, I'll make sure that area to be dredged is defined and mapped in the agreement.
You coming out the channel, going out there, wait, curve and lead, that channel straight out.
If you want the other one too, in case it gets big, shoulder.
No, I understand what he's talking about now. I was not clearly understanding before the conversation.
Let me show you.
I think
Coming
the
straight down
circles
that
are what
channel.
confused us.
We're gonna start right here in front of the facility.
Yeah.
We're gonna get this area around in front of the facility, and we're gonna come out right here down the center, and straight out right here down the center. We're not gonna try to dredge it all the way from one side to the other, because it'll create way too much material. We're gonna try to get about a 50-foot wide channel from right here out and straight out through here. Right in this area right here, on a good low tide, it's only about 2 foot deep. There's a hump that's washed in right there.
I'm gonna make a motion based on the attorney's documents that he was referring to earlier, to make sure all that's complete. That'll be my motion, proceed.
Second.
Let him dredge it.
I got a motion on the floor, this for him to dredge, right?
Yes, sir.
I got a motion on the floor by Commissioner Parrish, second by Commissioner Jones. Any more discussion?
Just one question. Will the other will this facilitate other public use of boating and so on in that area?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
It'll help everything.
Yeah, to open it
Okay.
up, it's just open up.
I think I've heard about this before, and you're doing this at your own expense,
Yes, sir.
and basically with the Corps of Engineers' blessing, and
Yes, sir.
DEP, and facilitating all that. Good.
Yes, sir. Dan's got emails from them, from the
Okay.
head guy with DEP saying, go ahead.
That's great.
Any more discussion?
Like that.
I hope it works for you.
Yeah.
I hope
Keep
it
us
works.
posted. That'd be
You don't
great.
have to do that easy. I see what you're doing. All right, y'all ready to vote? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Thank y'all.
Y'all go vote.
Thank you.
Y'all go start dredging. I told them to go
Appreciate you.
vote.
That's neat.
Yeah. All right. Highlight. Next on the agenda will be H.T. Kennison, Wayne CEO. New doctors discussion.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm H.T. Cannington, the CEO at Weems Memorial Hospital. It's good to be here this morning. From what I understand, there was a study done in June, just to give you some background, in June of 2017 by Community Hospital Corporation, where they identified that Franklin County had a shortage of physicians. I think it was like 2.2, something like that. We are also still designated as a health professional shortage area by the federal government. I know that since I've been here, since May of last year, we've been actively recruiting a physician to this area for a number of reasons. And then as a partner with Tallahassee Memorial Hospital, they have been very active in assisting us with recruiting since January of this year. And they've also been very active in they actually engaged a retained search firm to assist us, and they've been working with us throughout the process to see if there's a way that we can get a physician to come to this area. And so now we have one, and I'll tell you a little bit about him. His name is Dr. John Waltz. He does not come through a recruiting agency. He's from Ohio. He and his wife were on vacation down on St. George Island, and they loved it so much that they sent me an email saying that they would like to move to this area in a year or two. And so would we be interested in talking to him? And so I contacted him and basically said that would be great, but we need a physician right now, and we're actively recruiting. And at the time we're talking to another physician that was interested, and had another one that was showing some interest. So Dr. Waltz made a pretty quick trip down here within about 3 weeks, and then he came and brought his wife back down here week before last, and they are very, very, very interested in being here. Now, both of them are from Ohio. He has served in the Army and was a flight surgeon. He's board certified in occupational medicine, but has spent all of his career working more in primary care, either as a flight surgeon, and also after he finished his commitment to the Army, he moved back to his hometown and has been working as a primary care physician, medical director of a clinic up there. He's had quite a bit of experience with working with mid-level practitioners, nurse practitioners, physician assistants. He also has worked closely with the Department of Health and is the physician member of their board up where he lives right now. He went to school at Ohio University in Athens, Ohio, did his residency at the University of Cincinnati, and has a Master of Science in Public Health. And he and his wife both want to be a part of this community. And so I've been, with the help of TMH, we've been looking at his contract and what his requirements are and what we feel like we can do. We feel like this is an investment in the hospital and the health care of this community, definitely the medical community, and also he's going to be a part of the community because they'll be living in this area. He will be working at the clinics, Weems East, Weems West. He will also be supervising the mid-levels that we currently have, and if we are able to recruit others, he'll do that. And then also he's, within 1 year, he will be credentialed or have the privileges to admit patients to the hospital. And this is going to be one of the big, besides having someone, a physician that's in charge of our clinics and there on a daily basis, also helping to improve the kinds of things that we can do in the clinics. This will also have a significant impact on the revenue at the hospital. He'll be able to treat more chronic type diseases and do follow-up on things like that. And typically, physicians order more labs, x-rays, and things like that than what mid-levels do, primarily because they are more into chronic disease management. So I think this is going to be a big plus, not only for the clinics, the hospital, but also for the community. Now, what we have been able to come up with is that he's going to require a base salary of $215,000, and then there will be, as an employee of the hospital, he'll be receiving the same benefits that other employees do, plus we'll pay his malpractice insurance, again, as an employee, and that'll come under our umbrella policy, which means that it will not cost us, should not cost us as much as what it would if he were a private practitioner. There'll be some other benefits to him that that other employees are not eligible for, but as a physician he'd like to have included. So the total package would be about $237,000 as a base. Now, when I keep saying a base, we will have an incentive program, and it's based on what they call worked relative value units, or WRVUs. And instead of just using visits, we use relative value units, and this is what this is what most people are going to, that employ physicians or have them working in a multi-physician clinic. As a reference, the median pay for a family practitioner that does not do OB, as published by the Medical Group Management Association, is $247,253. From the physician recruiter at TMH has told me that we're really getting a good deal on this guy. So, so I think it's going to be good. Now, we will have to pay a retention amount to him, and also have to pay for his relocation. Those two together will be $45,000.
Whoa.
What?
Stop it right there.
Okay.
Wow. What you talking about, paying his rent and stuff?
We will pay $15,000 for relocation, which is his household goods, up to $15,000. If he's not able to sell his house and we have to pay, he needs temporary housing, then we would pay up to $15,000 for that.
No, we're not doing that. I'm not.
Okay.
I'm not. No, sir. Man gonna make that type of money and want us to pay his rent?
Well, the doctors and family practitioners, like I say, they're $247,000 is a median.
Well, where's this money gonna come from? How you gonna pay for this doctor?
He will the first year loss should be about $118,000 on an accrual basis. We expect him to, we don't have a doctor that's full-time here working in these clinics. We think there's a need for that, and based on talking to the professional physician recruiter in Tallahassee Memorial and the work that we've done, we think that we can pay for most of this through operations. Also, there will be increased revenue for the hospital by having a physician in the community that sends patients to the hospital. Also, the inpatients after the first year will increase revenue.
You thinking you can pay for them out the payroll side out there?
Yes, sir. Through increased operations, yes.
I don't think you can. I don't.
Okay.
The other commissioners here, because we've had.
I mean, you saying after the first year loss?
After the first year, I think that there's a potential that hopefully we can pay everything out of operations. If we're not able to, and there are a lot of things that are unforeseen, what can happen with the operations at the hospital. We're about to have a roof put on. That's gonna probably slow some things down at the hospital. But even with that, I think the amount of cash that may be required outside of operations for the first year will be $150,000 to $200,000.
Where you plan on getting that from?
That's the first year. If we cannot pay for it operations, then we'll be asking for it to come out of the trust fund.
The trust
Now-
fund can't pay for everything.
Yeah.
I mean, it can't pay for building a hospital, for having this done, because you done had to use the money from the savings account down to it's gotten to 100,000, it was 800,000.
Now, say that again, sir?
The savings account we had out at the bank, we done got it down to 100, we used 600,000 or 700,000 here this year.
I don't believe that's true. We've had about $800,000 total cash.
We had
That is
800,000 in the
operating.
savings account, and it's down to 100,000, so where did that money go to?
That's a money market account you talking about.
Yeah, the money market account, where did it go to?
It goes for operations. But the thing is that, that we've only had about 800 and something thousand dollars since I've been here in total cash, which is the operating account plus the money market account. Now, I'd have to go back and look, and I'll be glad to look at exactly what has been the balance in each of those accounts. But I don't recollect that we've ever had $800,000 in the money market account since I've been here. Now that.
The email I got, it's back up, the email I got, you didn't have to come to borrow none from the trust fund, because you used that to pay some of the payroll, or something out there, we had it in the savings.
I think it was about 743.
743, okay, I'm sorry, 743.
In the money market account, Michael?
Yeah, I think it was
Okay,
about
excuse me.
743.
And it's down to
Okay.
100 something now, I think.
2020.
We started last year, it was about 743.
Just saying,
Chairman,
the trust fund can't pay for everything.
I totally understand that, sir, and I feel that with the increased revenue for the clinics themselves and providing the services to the people of the community, and also the increased revenue at the hospital, that we'll be able to pay most of this. Now, this is the first year. After the first year, he should be, it takes about 18 months for a physician typically to get to a break-even part. And so hopefully after that first year and a half, we'll be okay. And the figures that I'm giving you of the loss of $118,000 the first year, that's based on an accrual basis.
But you know what you're doing. Man, sir, you getting up in $45,000.
Excuse me?
You wanna get this man $45,000 to move him. He making, what, 200 something thousand. If he can't move him for, out of that 200 something thousand, you tell him stay where he at.
Okay.
You tell him stay where he at. I mean, I'm tired of this. Ain't nobody paying nobody way down here no more. The free rides is over. We not paying nobody transportation to come here sell their house, and do all that. Do you realize you paying them people more than what them people making out there? $45,000, that's 3 of your workers' pay on the short level, on the bottom end. They ain't making that kind of money. You ain't paying them $15,000 a year, and you wanna give this man $45,000?
I know that-
Come down, no.
I know that
Fight him with that.
when TMH hired a Merritt
This
Hawkins,
not TMH. This
I
is
understand that, but
Franklin County.
but I know that when I asked them how long it would take us to recruit a physician, it was a year and a half is what they're looking at for family practitioners. We have an opportunity here to recruit a family practitioner
I
that's very
understand that.
well trained, and this is what kind of money it takes to get someone here.
That's,
And
I understand that.
and-
I understand. Okay, just a minute. I'm gonna look at it. I understand that, and we need doctors. But it's not for so much money out there. And we just can't be, this ain't none of, we can't begin to make money like we got, like this. We're not a bank. We don't buy houses. We hire doctors. Yeah. They want to get hired, they get hired. They get them up. This not the U.S. Army where we pack them up and move them. No. The Army do that. Franklin County not able to do it. Go ahead.
On the other two you got coming, where did that $30,000 come out of that you paid to hunt the other positions?
Excuse me?
The two,
Medical technologists, medical techs.
Medical
techs.
technologists.
The headhunter's fee is what he's referring to.
Where's that come from?
Yeah, where did that money
Operations.
come out of?
Operations.
Did you have to do that, or you couldn't find them on your own? You had to pay somebody to do it?
We had to pay somebody to do it. Medical technologists are the hardest specialty to find in hospitals right now. There are a lot, most of them, when I came here, we were using what they call a traveler, which means we were paying about $62 an hour, I think, for a medical technologist. And these are people that sign 3-month contracts, and they'll come in and work full-time for you. And that's what we were doing when I first came here. We lost another medical technologist during the storm because they lost their house over in Panama City, and it got to where it was costing them. They were driving 3 hours one way. And we've been looking for medical technologists, and we've had 3 different agencies, all what they call contingency search firms, to try to get one. And we've just found we were fortunate to get a husband and wife team that's willing to come here. But in answer to your question, yes, sir, we do have to pay recruiting agencies to find certain positions.
So do we, Mr.
And-
Chairman? So do we lose some people out there, and you hired these 2 people to replace the 2 that left?
Yes, sir.
So you lost 2 people out there? You said you lost 1 during the storm.
We lost one during the
So
storm.
you lost another one?
There was one that was, when I got here, we were one short. And so they were using, or understaffed, and they were using what they call a traveler. Somebody that goes from place to place, and they get paid for it.
So you're increasing the payroll out there by hiring these 2 people that you've just hired?
Actually, we'll be decreasing payroll because we've been paying significant overtime dollars.
And the doctor you're wanting to hire, that's not going to increase the payroll too? And the
The
sparsity plan that you're wanting to do, that's not going to increase the payroll too?
The doctor will increase the payroll.
And the sparsity plan? Should you implement the sparsity plan?
No,
That
sir,
will
I have
increase-
not.
That will increase payroll also $106,000? And the 2 employees you just
that has
hired
not
and the
been-
doctor you're talking about hiring, how much is the payroll going to increase
The
in the next
parity
year?
plan has not been increased. I mean, has not been implemented.
And we're looking at trying to build a new hospital, and that's the reason I said at the last meeting, I don't see how we can do it. Because the trust fund money is gonna have to go to pay for all this other stuff. So I don't know. And I'm not in favor of it either. I'm not gonna vote for it.
Trust fund's about had it.
I mean, it will have it.
Yeah, it's going to.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, sir.
did you mention earlier in your presentation that this physician you're thinking about recruiting here is not presently credentialed to admit patients to our hospital, and it would take a year to get him credentialed in that area?
It would not take him a year to get credentialed in that area.
But he's not credentialed today to admit patients to our hospital. Did I hear you say that?
That is true, Commissioner, that he is not credentialed today, but that is not, he also has not applied for privileges.
I understand.
And so he has not.
Privileges and credentialing, I think, are two, they go together, but, you know, obviously he's an income producer by being a gateway for admission to your hospital, and I would think that he should be up and, if he is here, he ought to be up and ready to start earning income for that hospital immediately through his proper credentialing to admit.
Okay. Things have changed a lot in the past 20, 25 years, where a lot of family practitioners do not want to admit patients, and that's the reason we have hospitalists now.
Yes.
And these are people that don't normally see patients in an office, but they do admit patients. Currently, our emergency room group, which is Southland, they are also our hospitalists.
Yes.
And so they will admit any patient that any practitioner, physician, nurse practitioner wants them to admit. They will admit them to the hospital, and they get paid to treat those patients. Now, when I talked to Dr. Conrad, who is the local medical director for Southland, he indicated that they would be willing to admit all patients for Dr. Waltz if he comes.
Yeah.
Dr. Waltz, it's not a requirement that he admit patients to the hospital, but he would like to. Where he is currently, he is not admitting patients. Lots of hospitals only allow hospitalists, and the reason for that is that for a hospitalist group to come, if you've got 6 doctors, primary care doctors, and 3 of them want a hospitalist and 3 of them don't want a hospitalist, it's hard to get a hospitalist group to come in. So usually the medical staff changes their bylaws and says that only hospitalists can admit can admit patients. I don't know what the situation is with him in Ohio, but what he has said is that since he has not been admitting patients, that within a year that he, I think he would like to get some additional training, going back and, refresh his skills so that he can admit. I don't think that is an unreasonable provision in the contract.
Why he can't do it and then put in for it?
Why can he not do what now?
Get his license and
It's not about a license. It's about, he has the license to admit right now.
I'm talking about the extra part of that.
All right. The way the contract is that once we get the contract approved, then he submits his application for, to be a member of our medical staff here, and also for certain privileges at the hospital. At that point in time, and when we finish the background check and he's fully credentialed here, then we will give him half of what his this retention bonus is.
Bonus?
Yeah.
What bonus? You didn't say nothing about a bonus.
Okay. Retention amount.
Oh, okay.
Ain't be no bonus.
Okay. So I'm sorry I used the word bonus.
Ain't no money is coming out of there paying nobody to come here. I mean, bonus or nothing else.
Well, I understand that. I think that the commissioners are I strongly recommend.
Look now, let me ask you a question. How much in your contract, I never heard no amount of the guaranteed time he gonna be here?
5 years.
5 years?
Yes.
That's all.
I mean, that's the amount is 5 years.
So in 5 years, he can go on by the business.
He can,
Once he build up his business through the hospital, he gonna leave in 5 years?
no, I don't think he's going to leave 5 years. He wants a 5-year employment agreement is what he's asking for.
You know, I just think he's very, very high maintenance going into this situation. I really do. I certainly, the most valuable asset we have in this community is the health of our people, and I see the spirit of this, but there's just too much maintenance and headwind to get this guy here and then to keep him here.
I respectfully disagree, Commissioner. I've recruited physicians for years and years and years. I've talked to the TMH recruiter, and I know this is not TMH, but they're professional physician recruiters. This is what it takes to get a qualified physician to a rural area. Now, if you choose not to do that, I understand it, but you're not going to have this opportunity. Well, I shouldn't say. I don't know what will happen in the future, but to have someone that's willing to come to a rural area, and I know this seems like a lot of money,
I hear that.
but it's really not compared to the market. But anyway, I'll answer more questions if you'd like for me to, but.
Mr. Chairman? The number that you're requesting for the doctor is not abnormal. I understand that. What I do understand is where's the money coming from? That's my problem. So if we're not gonna build a new building, then it might take it under consideration. Okay. But if you're gonna sit there and pay $600,000-$700,000 payments on a new building, there's no way we can afford the rest of this stuff. And I don't, you know, you say, and in your emails and all, you say, hopefully we can, the operations will sustain it. Well, what do we do if it don't? We can't build a new building and do all this other stuff too. There ain't no way. There ain't no way. I mean, if we're gonna go for a doctor, then I'm not gonna vote for the building for sure. And if I don't see where we can do anything to help offset the cost of a new building, I ain't voting for that either. Sustainability is an issue, and you can't keep coming back to the trust fund to sustain the hospital. So I don't know what we're doing here. I mean, either we're gonna sustain the hospital and not build a new building, and if we're not, then maybe we could look at a doctor. I understand what you're saying, but I understand what the other commissioners are saying about the moving allowance and the bonuses. And for long, it's gonna be $300,000 a year for this doctor, and that might be the normal rate. I understand they're very expensive recruitment. I've heard other people spit out numbers of $250,000 in recruiting a physician. I understand why you're saying we need a physician, and we do. But all the numbers don't match up. You can't do all this stuff at one time. The trust fund is going to run out of money. Then what we going to do? I mean, I don't want to be in a position to bankrupt the trust fund. I mean, that's not where I want to be. And in good conscience, I ain't going to vote for it. I mean, till we figure out what we're going to do with this building. Are we going to build a building? But you got to curtail, and I keep saying this every meet that you come. If your expenses are more than your revenues, then something's upside down, and it ain't gonna be long in a normal business function. And I run a business every day. You're gonna be out of business. I mean, that's just the way it works in the real world. You got more expenses than you got revenue to pay bills, you're gonna be out. And I'm not gonna be responsible for, you know, doing that. As a publicly elected official, they didn't elect me to sit up here and act like I'm crazy. They know I run a business every day. They know I know expenditures and revenues and accounts payable and accounts receivable. They know I know all this. I can't sit here in good conscience and do it any other way. I mean, I just can't. And that's the way I feel about it.
Yeah, but just like I was saying, if you hadn't had some of that money to fall back on and out of the other and bring it down, you'd have had to borrow from the trust fund to help pay stuff out there.
Well, it's gone now, so where are you going to get the money?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
It's like this.
Is that right?
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. At first, we thought everything was floating high until we found out that was gone. And I'm like Smokey, I'm not gonna put the county in that type of debt and do it, because $45,000 move on 2 months rent free. and being a doctor?
It's just like this here. I know God knows in heaven, I know we need doctors.
Well, bad.
I know we need doctors. But you don't, man, you're backdooring us. I mean, you telling us this a good number with that low price, and you giving them the high number with all them extra things you getting.
The good number,
You
the
talking about
good
the
number
salaries,
is,
but
the good number though, is for 5 years. The one-time payment, the retention and the relocation is a one-time shot, and then it's over with.
Well, look, let me ask you a question.
And if you want to recruit a physician to Franklin County, this is what it's going to cost, and probably more.
Let me ask you a question.
Okay.
You say he came down here, that's where you met him.
Yes.
Did he get a one-time retention for that when he went on that island?
No, sir, he did not.
Well, that's the way he need to come the next time.
Okay.
What part of that you don't understand?
Are there any
Chairman, I've
other
got a question.
questions?
Mr. Kennington?
Yes.
When you were talking first, you said that he was moving to the area.
Yes.
Is he moving to Franklin County, or is he moving to another county?
He's moving to Franklin County, and he's required to live in Franklin County.
Required to live in Franklin County?
Yes.
Okay. I guess the bigger picture for us as a board, and maybe it's just because of the way things have historically been done, our problem is revenue. Our problem is not running to the trust fund to see what's there. Our problem is revenue at our hospital. And if we're not collecting dollars, we have to squash what dollars we're able to spend until we can catch up. That's just the way it is. That's life. That's real. If I want to add something at Napa that I think might be valuable to be sold in the community and something that's very necessary, I can't do that until I can pitch the owner that it's something we can do and we can afford to do it. I know we need a doctor. I'm just like everyone else up here. We're not opposed to the hospital, but the dollars and cents have to make sense. So I think what we need to do is have more empowerment of our hospital board. And some of these things, maybe, I don't think the commissioners need to be getting reports, but your hospital board members need more reporting. They really, really do. Because at the end of the day, if we lose our CH designation, we're done talking anyway. And I've not heard anything in the last 2 times you've been here for us to identify the ACRA report, what they said, how we're taking care of it, and how we're getting past it.
Now,
At all.
Now, you want to know about the ACRA report?
Now, I want to know that we are good and we've got our CH designation intact and we're moving forward. And that might not be answerable today.
The CAH designation has never been in jeopardy, period. Okay? There's never been any, I mean, it's never been in jeopardy. I don't know where that's coming from. Okay?
It's coming from the report.
From the ACRA report doesn't, okay. As far as the ACRA report is concerned, whenever they came here and did their survey, and then they put them in writing, and we submitted a plan of correction, which is what we're required to do, and they accepted that plan of correction. And then they came back for a revisit the 25th of last month, and everything had been corrected, and I mean, we're through with the ACRA report for now.
So have they said that everything's good?
Yes.
Have they put it in writing?
I don't know that we've gotten it back in writing.
I would like to see it in writing.
Yeah, definitely.
Me too.
Yep.
I'd like to see one thing too. You too? I'd like to see, can you run this hospital without messing with that trust fund?
No, sir.
You love them checks, don't you? Lord have mercy.
Commissioner, this is a critical access hospital, and we're paid based on costs by Medicare and supposedly Medicaid, and there's no way that this hospital and just about every other critical access hospital in America can operate where their net revenues exceed their expenses because of the low volume. This is the reason that the federal government came out in 1996 and came up with a critical access hospital designation for communities that really, 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 really needed a hospital or a county, and yet they could not, I mean, they can't make enough money to sustain themselves.
I know, but they done that to help, and people run hospitals, but they didn't come up with the sales tax, and people run hospitals.
A lot of counties will do ad valorem taxes. But fortunately, this hospital, I mean, you know, you guys, years ago, and the voters decided that to sustain the hospital, you would have a sales tax, which was good. But when you ask, can I run this hospital without getting any money from the outside, the answer is no.
I think it's like this here. Well, if you got to go there, but you going too regular.
Commissioner, Mr. Chairman, I think you're talking about two different things. You're talking about, can he survive with just the percentage of the trust fund you give him now?
Yeah, that's right.
And not come beyond that?
Right.
That's what he's asking you. He's not asking you.
Excuse me.
Without that. So I think that's what the problem is. And I want to get something on the record that I was asked to. Unfortunately, Mr. Creamer, Doug Creamer, the board chair, could not be here today for a medical situation. But he did, his opinion is, and I think he disagrees with Mr. Cannington, he wants the board to know it is, in his opinion, that there will be required trust fund, a request for the trust fund to help assist with a doctor. It might not be the doctor directly, but he's saying paying the doctor will cause maybe a shortage somewhere else within operations. So any request, in his opinion, any request, there will be some type of request, no matter what it might be for.
Yeah, I mean,
that's his opinion. He wanted me to get it on the record, and I wanted to say that.
So you pay the doctor out of operation, but now you can't pay the employee.
But he is,
Yeah.
is in favor of, like the board, he is in favor of a doctor. A doctor is really needed here in the county, and the chairman is in favor of it. He just wants the board to be aware that there might be a request in the future from the trust fund because of having to pay the doctor.
In a 5-year agreement, it's gonna be an ongoing. It's gonna be an ongoing request.
Mr. Creamer says that he don't think operation can pay for the doctor. He said, you think we have to borrow from the trust fund to pay for the doctor, to help out. And he said, all this other stuff's coming out of the trust fund. I've talked with him.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, he don't think it all can pay operation. Everything can't come out of the trust fund, you know.
Well, I just want to make sure.
Because if you're paying $600,000 a year, then this on top of it, and this other on top of it. Like Smokey said, we're gonna be
out of top of it.
If you don't build a hospital, you can hire a doctor.
But he is in favor of the county getting a doctor.
Yeah.
It's something we really need.
But you gotta fund it.
Well, what that high dollar accountant not there
Favor building a
doing?
hospital too.
You got a high dollar, that high dollar accountant,
CFO?
yeah, what he bringing in?
You got to ask me.
What he bringing in?
Who's that?
That high dollar accountant, that CFO.
115,000 a
I'm
year.
talking about what he bringing in to the
That's helping the revenue side.
the revenue cycle, what he bringing in?
He's responsible for all of the revenue that comes in, how it's collected, how it's coded, you know, all of those things. All of the functions that go with the chief
Is he
financial
bringing
officer.
in, is he doing it
Yes, sir, he is.
on that? Well, why are we
And
asking for money?
I'm not asking for money. I'm asking for approval to recruit a doctor. And I'm saying that there's a chance that we may need some money, but I don't.
Well, if you're not
And
asking
back
for
to back to your question originally, Commissioner, can I run the hospital for the 50% that we get from the
60?
trust fund? Yes.
Okay, now why, if he's doing so good, why that $700,000 going down?
We went through a hurricane and did not come in and ask for any additional money. Now we're into the summer months and our expenses do not decrease that much. You
Well,
know,
see, that's what I'm told. See, okay, now you're telling after the fact. That would get me confused. See, you should have told us that during the hurricane. Say, I'm using this. Don't wait till a year later after the hurricane and say, I used that. You came in here during the hurricane, you said, I ain't had to borrow no money. I ain't had to ask y'all for no money. Okay, but you didn't tell us why. And that don't look good. A year down the road, and the bank account got $100-some thousand. I mean, hey, all we want is the truth.
Commissioner, all I've said, or each one of you, all I've ever done is told the truth. And the thing is, I did not know that I had to come to this body in order to go into the money market account. I never was told that. If someone had told me that I had to come to the county commission and let you know that we're going to take money out of the money market account into the operating account, I would have done that. But I have never been told that. What we report
Who
on,
did you go to?
that's a part of operations. That is what is reported every month on our financials, is what they call cash and cash equivalents. And that's the total of the operating account, the savings account, or the money market account, and any impress funds we have.
So
That standard accounting, I'm sorry, but I was never told that.
HC, the problem is that that $600,000 that was in the operating account had come from the trust fund as a one-time allocation. And maybe you didn't realize that, but that's the concern, was the trust fund was, that operating was enhanced by the $600,000 loan 2 years ago or so, and it was always kept on your books. How many years?
3 years, it was July of 2016, yeah.
So that's the concern, is that we thought that money was at some point not necessarily paid back, but at least it was recognized. It was an additional revenue stream, and now that's all been run through, and they're afraid it's going to happen again.
Well, what we report, and that makes sense, but what we report every month from the hospital to the board, and if I ever make a presentation to you, when I say cash, and it's really called cash and cash equivalents, that's for the operating account, the money market account, and any other cash accounts that we have. And if you want more details on that, that's fine, but that's the cash that we have available to us.
Can I ask you one more question? I'll stop.
Sure.
If we told you today you could hire that doctor right now, where would you get the $45,000 to Cindy
From operations.
from operation? You got it in there to Cindy.
Yes, sir.
Ain't gonna happen.
But we don't need $45,000 today.
If he moves here, you're gonna have to give him 45, you said, to move.
But again,
15 here, 2
not
months
today.
rent.
He would get 15,000 whenever, once he's gone through the background check and the credentialing, and then he would get, he has to give a 180-day notice to get out of where he is now. And so then at the time that he comes here, then
6 months.
be 6 months,
Before we even
February
see
or
it.
March.
And you gonna give him $15,000?
Yes, sir.
And before he's here for 6 months?
Man, it's not
Sweet
gonna happen.
Jesus.
Okay.
No.
Any other
It's not gonna
questions?
happen.
I just have some positive comments potentially. Let's just take it from another standpoint. We see what you're saying, but let's look at it from this standpoint. We're talking about needing physicians. You know, Florida State University's medical school is just up the street here, and it has a connection with TMH. And we have very viable paramedical people today, and that I believe can order more tests and have the credentialing to be able to do that for income based on medical justification. And I recognize that you need to look at FSU and offer them the opportunity to bring their supervised physicians, residents down here for practicums as well. I think there's an opportunity for that. And I also feel like we really need more counsel from TMH and to see what more they can do to help us facilitate our health care here with the physicians they already have up there. The main thing I'm very concerned about is the issue of this doctor, with all the things that have been unraveling this morning. He is not credentialed well enough to get into the hospital situation that we have right now. So I think you see the sentiment of the board, and I'd like to give the alternative to look at TMH's medical school. I mean, FSU's medical school, and working with some of the staff at TMH for other physicians here.
And you're talking about bringing them in on a
I
rotating
think
basis?
that we ought to look at that option. I sure do.
And I think that's a good idea if we had a physician here, but most people do not want to set up a medical home with somebody that rotates in and out. You know, we need a permanent physician here in the community that's a part of the community in order to build up the medical community. And it is going to cost a lot of money, but it's an investment. And that's what I strongly believe, and TMH has been extremely involved in not only the recruitment, but also in the financial package that I presented to you this morning.
I go to the doctor in Tallahassee. I ain't seen him in a year. All I see is a physician. I haven't seen the doctor in 1 year. PA. That's all I see is a PA. I have not seen a doctor.
But there is a doctor there.
If he is, I ain't seen him.
I understand, but
And we've got Conrad so far. Isn't he the hospitalist we're looking for?
he's an ER doctor and he's a hospitalist.
Mm-hmm.
And he also supervises the mid-levels right now.
Yeah, and the gateway, pathway to admitting to our hospital. I think we have the infrastructure set up in many ways in our community already.
Commissioners, if I may, I think one of the things we need to consider, including you, Mr. Connington, is that when you start to build your budget for the following year, if you're so sure you can pay for it from operations, find a way to get it in your budget. In your operating budget.
It will be in the budget if he's hired.
Well, I guess what I'm saying is, okay, so what they're telling you, they don't trust that operations could pay for it. So prove it to them. I guess is what I'm trying to send a very
tell you
simple.
what-
Yeah, but
I tell
I
you
got
what
one
you-
more question. Did you use any of that money that we was talking about to pay payroll?
Any of which money?
The
Money market?
Money market. Did you use any of that to pay payroll?
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's all I want to know. There you go. If you hadn't had that, you'd had to come to the trust fund and ask for some like the ones before.
We have not come for the trust fund in over 3 years.
Hey, listen, you listen to what I just said. I said you used some of that money to do it. If you hadn't had that money, you'd had to use some out of the trust fund.
That money come from.
Yeah, but I'm saying, but it had to come straight to us and come to the board and ask for it like they normally do.
Yes, the difference, HD, was, I think the point they're trying to get across, no other CEO had the advantage of having a money market account with $714,000 or 40, I'm sorry, when they started. So what they're trying to compare and say, okay, the ones, because they've always criticized the ones in the past that come forward. They're saying if you didn't have that luxury, you'd have been here just like all the other CEOs. Is that what you guys are saying?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm trying to say.
And that money market money came from the trust fund originally, didn't it?
Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
600,000. Yeah, I don't want to rehash the battles between Mr. Cooper and myself, but yes, that's where it
You
basically.
told him to build it up.
Yes.
See, it's a backdoor deal.
And it's the same way with the physician and everything else. You hope you got the money, but if you don't, what you gonna do?
Well,
You gonna have to go to the trust fund.
yes, but
So once you say yes, hire a physician, now you on the hook for 5 years. 5 years, you're gonna have to come up with money to pay this physician, or take the money out of operations to pay the physician. Now the employees don't get paid.
yeah.
So one way or the other, you coming back because them employees want to get paid just like the physician. What I'm trying to say is, if you don't have the revenue, don't create these expenditures. Don't create them because you got a flower on the wall. If you ain't sure, positively sure you have that money, then don't do it. That's the way it happens at my house. You know, my wife wants to drive a Mercedes, and she could for 3 months till the tow truck backed up. So I don't do it.
Yes,
I don't do it. You gotta be physically conservative, you know? And everybody else that we've had as a CEO, yeah, they've had to come to us time and again, but it's been over, you know, a year and a half that they hadn't had to come back. But everybody else has been able to manage pretty much on what the subsidy that we give them, the $1.1 million subsidy we give them, and we give them so much for the ambulance, blah, blah, blah. So, I mean, everybody else has been able to do it, but you don't create all these expenditures and hope you can pay for them. That's what gets me. You just don't, it don't work like that in the real world. I know this is a hospital, I understand that. It's been open since I've been elected and it's still open. But I've never had nobody come back and create all these expenditures with no way to pay for it. I mean, I just don't understand what's going on.
that's why I was recommending that the
Well, what, you on the hook? You on the hook then?
Yeah. But I'm saying a budget, you know, the future budget that shows where the revenue would come from for the expenditure, if we put that in mind, next budget year, maybe there's a better discussion. Let me just say that.
Yeah, but Lip and Dish is going down.
Well, yeah,
you're not gonna get the big money out of Lip and Dish that we previously had.
Well, you know what?
That's another revenue stream that's gone.
You know what I want to, and I want this in a movie. Man, don't you get now another quarter out, talking about no travelers coming down here and paying their way. How much you done gave them these folks money to traveling? I mean, bringing them down here and bonuses.
I think he's referring to the MedTech.
The-
He wants to know what was the total cost for the MedTech, salary, travel, relocation, and then the finder's fee, I guess. Is that what you're asking, sir?
Yeah.
The two MedTechs that he referred to.
If you're gonna do that, you get that man who's sweeping the floor the same thing.
All right, did you have a,
I don't give out no more money talking about you paying no traveler, nobody we to come live down here. Not now another quarter.
okay?
I don't, we ain't
Anything
paying
yet?
no, them people making money. We ain't not moving nobody. We don't do that.
Okay.
We down in Apalachicola, we can't afford to do it.
Where they moving to?
Who's that?
Tex that's coming.
The MedTechs
Yeah.
are living in Callaway, is that right? Is that over near Panama City?
Yeah.
And they gonna be driving the Gulf Coast in 2 months in Callaway. I
Any
wonder
more
if they gonna pay
questions?
their way. And they ain't gonna pay their way from, they ain't gonna pay their way from Callaway to Gulf Coast to the hospital. Man, no, don't do that. Don't give away these people money. We responsible for this.
Commissioners, in order for us to have staff at the hospital, sometimes we have to do things that may not be normal for other
Who retired?
industries. Medical technologists.
Who retired? I mean,
Who
how
retired?
many you got out there now?
We have 3 medical technologists right now. And I can't get, anyway,
wasn't
y'all have
qualified
other
to.
questions for me?
We got more.
Thank you very much.
We got more than 3 out there.
Mike just tell me, get on down the damn road. I go to lunch.
Yes.
Come back.
All right.